Come on, damn it! Start already!
Nicholas Wilson stood in the executive parking garage, staring at his $400,000 Koenigsegg like it had personally betrayed him. The man who'd fired 3 employees that morning for being late couldn't get his own car to respond. His key fob was dead. The backup wouldn't sync. And the only person watching, really watching, was the kid with the torn jacket who'd been sitting against the garage wall for the past 2 weeks. Malik Davis didn't say anything. He just looked at the car, then at the CEO, then back at the car. Something in his eyes suggested he understood exactly what was wrong. Nicholas noticed. He didn't want to, but he did. Before we see what happens next, quick question: what time is it where you're watching this? Morning commute? Late night scroll? And where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're curious where this is headed, hit that like button and subscribe. You'll want to see how this plays out. Nicholas Wilson had built Wilson Tech Solutions from nothing into a company worth $200 million. He'd done it through precision, control, and the ability to identify weakness in any system. Right now, the system failing him was a Swedish hypercar that cost more than most people's houses, and the weakness was somewhere in its electronic architecture that he couldn't access. He pressed the key fob again. Nothing. The car sat there, sleek and silver, and completely unresponsive. He'd been standing in the parking garage for 20 minutes, and his 9 a.m. investor meeting was in 45 minutes across town. His phone showed 3 missed calls from his assistant and 2 from his lead investor. Malik had been watching from his usual spot near the stairwell entrance. He'd been staying in this garage for 2 weeks now, ever since the shelter on Palmer Street hit capacity. The security guards knew he was there, but hadn't kicked him out yet. He kept to himself, didn't bother anyone, and was always gone by morning rush hour. Except this morning, he'd overslept. And now he was witnessing something he probably wasn't supposed to see. Nicholas turned and saw him. Really saw him. Maybe for the first time, despite passing him dozens of times over the past 14 days. "You," Nicholas said, "have you been messing with my car?" Malik stood up slowly, hands visible. "No, sir. You've been sleeping in this garage. You're telling me you haven't touched anything?" "I haven't touched your car." Nicholas stared at him, then back at the Koenigsegg. He pulled out his phone and dialed the dealership. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried the service department. Same thing. It was 8:47 a.m. And apparently nobody at a luxury car dealership worked before 9. He turned back to Malik. "Do you know anything about cars?" Malik hesitated. Some meaning what? Meaning, "I know some things about cars." Nicholas' jaw tightened. He didn't have time for this. He needed someone from the dealership, or his own mechanic, or literally anyone who knew what they were doing. But those people weren't here. And this kid was. "The key fob won't communicate with the car," Nicholas said. "The backup fob does the same thing. The car won't recognize either one." Malik walked closer, stopping about 10 feet from the Koenigsegg. He looked at it carefully, his eyes moving over the body panels, the door handles, the subtle vents in the hood. "Did you drive through anything yesterday?" Malik asked. "Water? Mud? I drove home from work. Same route I always take." "Did you park anywhere else? Different garage? Different spot?" Nicholas frowned. "I had dinner downtown. I used valet parking." Malik nodded slowly. The sensor array under the front bumper probably got hit. Valet drivers park these things too close to curbs sometimes. If the proximity sensor gets damaged or knocked out of alignment, the whole security system locks down. The car thinks someone's tampering with it, so it won't accept any key signal. Nicholas stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I've seen it before." "You've seen a Koenigsegg security system malfunction before. Not a Koenigsegg. But the principle's the same across most high-end European cars. They all use variations of the same security architecture. If the physical sensors get compromised, the digital system assumes a threat." Nicholas didn't say anything for a long moment. He was trying to reconcile what he was hearing with what he was seeing. A homeless kid who'd been sleeping in his parking garage was explaining advanced automotive security systems to him with the kind of casual confidence usually reserved for certified technicians. "So, what do I do about it?" Nicholas asked. "You need to manually reset the sensor array. There's usually an access panel under the front fascia. You disconnect the sensor cluster, wait 30 seconds, reconnect it. The system should reboot and accept your key again. Should. It's not guaranteed, but it works most of the time." Nicholas looked at his watch. 8:52 a.m. He pulled out his phone and tried the dealership again. Still voicemail. "Can you do it?" Nicholas asked. Malik met his eyes. "You want me to work on your car. I want to know if you can do what you just described." "I can do it." Nicholas nodded once. "Then do it." Malik approached the car slowly, like he was still expecting Nicholas to change his mind or call security. He knelt down at the front bumper and ran his hand along the lower edge of the fascia. His fingers found a small panel that was nearly invisible against the carbon fiber body. He applied pressure in 2 specific spots, and the panel popped open. Inside was a tangle of wiring and sensors that looked like the inside of a computer. Malik reached in carefully, found a specific connector, and pulled it free. He counted silently, lips moving slightly, then reconnected it. There was a faint chirp from somewhere inside the car. Malik stood up and stepped back. "Try your key now." Nicholas pressed the fob. The Koenigsegg's lights flashed once, and he heard the quiet click of the locks disengaging. The door handle extended smoothly. Nicholas opened the door and stood there, one hand on the frame, looking at Malik. "Where did you learn to do that?" Nicholas asked. "Around?" "That's not an answer. It's the one I'm giving you." Nicholas' phone buzzed, his assistant calling again. He declined it. "What's your name?" Nicholas asked. "Malik." "Malik what? Does it matter?" Nicholas considered that, under normal circumstances, he'd have already called security to have this kid removed from the property. But these weren't normal circumstances. And the kid had just solved a problem in 3 minutes that would have cost Nicholas his entire morning. "Wait here," Nicholas said. He got into the car, started it. The engine turned over immediately with a deep, perfect growl and pulled out of his spot. He drove to the exit, then stopped and reversed back to where Malik was standing. Nicholas got out and pulled his wallet from his jacket. He took out $200 in cash and held it out. Malik looked at the money but didn't take it. "For your help," Nicholas said. "I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. I want a job." The words hung in the air between them. Nicholas' hand was still extended, holding the cash. Slowly, he lowered it. "A job," Nicholas repeated. "I'm good with systems. Electronics, mechanical, diagnostic work. I can learn fast. I just need someone to give me a chance." Nicholas studied him. The kid's jacket was torn at the shoulder. His jeans were stained, and he probably hadn't showered in days. But his eyes were clear and direct, and he'd just demonstrated more practical knowledge in 3 minutes than some of Nicholas' employees showed in 3 months. "You're living in a parking garage," Nicholas said. "For now." "Why?" "Because the shelter's full, and I don't have anywhere else to go." "No family?" "Not anymore." Nicholas' phone buzzed again. He looked at it, his investor, now sending texts in all caps, and made a decision he couldn't fully explain even to himself. "Get in the car," Nicholas said. Malik didn't move. "Why?" "Because I'm late for a meeting, and you're coming with me." "I don't understand." "You asked for a job. I'm not giving you one. But I'm going to find out if you actually know what you're talking about, or if you just got lucky with my car. So get in." Malik hesitated, then walked around to the passenger side. The Koenigsegg's interior was all leather and carbon fiber and screens that glowed with subtle blue light. He sat down carefully, like he was afraid of breaking something. Nicholas pulled out of the garage and into downtown traffic. The car moved like liquid, responding to the slightest input. Malik didn't say anything, but his eyes were taking in everything: the instrument cluster, the center console, the way Nicholas' hands moved on the steering wheel. You said you've seen this kind of problem before, Nicholas said. Where? Different places. Stop being vague. Where did you learn about automotive security systems? Malik was quiet for a moment. My dad worked at a dealership, high-end imports. I used to spend time there after school, watching the technicians work. I picked things up. Used to. He died 3 years ago. Nicholas didn't respond to that. He took a left turn, accelerating smoothly through a gap in traffic. What happened after he died? Nicholas asked. My mom couldn't afford our place on her own. We moved in with her sister. That lasted about a year before my aunt's boyfriend decided he didn't want us there anymore. My mom's working 2 jobs now, trying to save enough for a new place. I've been figuring things out on my own, so I'm not another expense she has to worry about. How old are you? 19. Nicholas pulled into the underground parking of a glass office tower. He parked in a visitor spot and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. The meeting I'm going to is with investors, Nicholas said. People who've put money into my company and want to know why our latest product launch got delayed. I'm going to tell them it's a minor setback and we'll be back on schedule within 6 weeks. That's not true. The truth is, we've got a fundamental problem with our hardware integration, and none of my engineers can figure it out. Why are you telling me this? Malik asked. Because you're going to sit in that meeting and not say a word. You're going to listen to what they describe, and afterward, you're going to tell me if you understand what the problem is. If you do, if you can actually explain it in a way that makes sense, then we'll talk about a job. If you can't, I'll give you $500 and drop you wherever you want to go. Malik turned to look at him. What if I understand the problem but I'm wrong about the solution? Then you'll be like every other engineer I've already got. They took the elevator to the 15th floor. Nicholas' assistant was waiting in the lobby, looking frantic. When she saw Nicholas, her expression shifted from panic to relief to confusion as she registered Malik standing next to him. Mr. Wilson, they're all waiting in the conference room, she said. Mr. Anderson has called twice, and who is this? This is Malik, Nicholas said. He's sitting in on the meeting. I don't have him on the visitor list. Add him. She looked at Malik's torn jacket and stained jeans, then back at Nicholas. Are you sure you want him in the investor meeting? Did I stutter? No, sir. Then add him to the list and let's go. The conference room was all windows and polished wood and leather chairs that probably cost more than Malik had ever had in his bank account at one time. 6 people were seated around the table, all of them in suits that fit perfectly. They looked up when Nicholas entered, and their expressions went from impatient to confused when they saw Malik. Gentlemen, ladies, sorry for the delay, Nicholas said smoothly. Car trouble. This is Malik Davis. He's consulting with us on some technical matters. Let's get started. Nobody questioned it. That was the thing about confidence. If you acted like something was completely normal, people usually accepted it as such. Malik sat in the chair Nicholas indicated, at the far end of the table, and stayed silent. For the next 40 minutes, Malik listened to Nicholas explain the delays in Wilson Tech's latest product, a piece of industrial monitoring hardware that was supposed to revolutionize how factories tracked equipment performance. The problem, according to Nicholas' carefully worded explanation, was a minor calibration issue that the engineering team was close to solving. One of the investors, a woman named Jennifer Thompson in a gray suit, wasn't buying it. Nicholas, we've heard close to solving for 3 months now, she said. What we need to know is whether this is actually fixable or whether we're looking at a fundamental design flaw. It's fixable, Nicholas said. Your engineers seem less certain. My engineers are being cautious. That's different from being uncertain. Jennifer leaned back in her chair. We've invested $17 million based on the promise that this product would be on the market by Q2. It's now Q3, and we're no closer to launch than we were 6 months ago. At some point, caution starts looking like incompetence. Nicholas' expression didn't change, but Malik saw his hand tighten on the folder in front of him. What exactly is the calibration issue? Asked another investor, a man named William Harris with silver hair and a voice that suggested he was used to getting answers. Nicholas glanced at his assistant, who pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. Technical diagrams filled the display: circuit layouts, sensor arrays, data flow charts. The monitoring hardware uses multiple sensors to track vibration, temperature, and acoustic signatures, Nicholas said. When we integrate all three data streams, we're getting periodic signal interference that throws off the readings. Periodic meaning what? William asked. Intermittent. We haven't been able to identify the exact pattern yet. Have you isolated which sensor is causing the interference? We believe it's a timing issue, not a specific sensor malfunction. Jennifer leaned forward. Nicholas, that's engineer speak for, we don't know. What does your lead engineer say? He says it's a timing issue. And what does that mean in practical terms? Nicholas hesitated. It was barely noticeable, maybe half a second, but Malik caught it. Nicholas didn't actually understand what his engineers had told him. He was repeating their assessment without fully grasping the underlying problem. Malik looked at the diagrams on the screen. He studied the sensor layout, the data integration pathways, the timing sequences shown in the flowchart. Something about it looked familiar. The issue is we're confident we can resolve it, Nicholas said. We just need a few more weeks to run additional tests. We've given you weeks, Jennifer said. What we need now is certainty. Can you fix this? Or do we need to have a more serious conversation about the future of this investment? The room went quiet. Nicholas met her eyes. And for the first time since Malik had met him that morning, he looked like a man who didn't have an answer. I can fix it, Malik said. Everyone turned to look at him. Nicholas' expression was unreadable. I'm sorry. Who are you again? William asked. His name is Malik Davis, Nicholas said carefully. He's consulting with us on technical matters, as I mentioned. And what's your background, Mr. Davis? Jennifer asked. Malik looked at Nicholas, who gave him the smallest nod. I work with diagnostic systems, Malik said. Electronics, integration issues, timing problems. Where? Jennifer pressed. Different places. Her eyes narrowed. That's deliberately vague. What matters is whether I can solve your problem, Malik said. You're getting signal interference because your sensor sampling rates aren't synchronized. You've got three sensors: vibration, temperature, acoustic, and they're all collecting data at slightly different intervals. When you try to integrate those streams, the timestamps don't line up perfectly, so the system reads it as interference. The room was completely silent. William was staring at Malik. Jennifer had her head tilted slightly, like she was trying to figure out if she'd heard him correctly. The solution, Malik continued, is to either force all three sensors to sample at the exact same rate, which means you might lose some data resolution, or you need to build a buffer system that can intelligently reconcile the timestamp differences before integration. The second option is harder to implement but gives you better data quality. Nicholas was looking at him with an expression Malik couldn't quite read. How do you know that's the problem? Jennifer asked. Because I'm looking at your sensor layout, Malik said, nodding toward the screen. You've got the vibration sensor set to sample every 10 milliseconds, the temperature sensor at 15 milliseconds, and the acoustic sensor at 12 milliseconds. Those rates don't share a common denominator that's small enough for clean integration. Every few seconds, you're going to get a convergence point where all three sensors try to report data at almost the same instant, and that's when your system registers interference. William picked up his tablet and started typing. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling up what looked like technical specifications. His expression changed as he read. He's right, William said quietly. The sampling rates are exactly what he just said. How did you see that from the diagram? It's listed in the corner of the second flowchart, Malik said. Small print, but it's there. Jennifer looked at Nicholas. Did your engineers identify this? We were exploring multiple possibilities, Nicholas said. That's not what I asked. Did they identify the sampling rate synchronization as the specific problem? Nicholas didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. How long have you had this consultant working with you? Jennifer asked. As of this morning, Nicholas said. This morning? That's correct. She laughed, not a happy sound, more like disbelief. You're telling me that this young man who you apparently hired this morning just diagnosed in 5 minutes what your entire engineering team couldn't figure out in 3 months? I'm telling you, he identified a strong candidate for the root cause, Nicholas said. We'll need to verify it, but his analysis is sound. William was still looking at his tablet. If this is the problem, and we implement the buffer solution he described, what's the timeline? Nicholas looked at Malik. 6 weeks, Malik said. Maybe 8, if you run into unexpected complications with the buffer architecture. And you're confident you can implement this? Jennifer asked. I'd need to see the actual hardware and run some tests. But yes, this kind of problem is solvable. Jennifer and William exchanged a look. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Nicholas, we need a word, Jennifer said. Privately. Nicholas stood. Malik, wait outside, please. Malik got up and left the conference room. He stood in the hallway, watching through the glass walls as the investors talked with Nicholas. The conversation looked intense. Nicholas' expression was controlled, but his posture was defensive. Jennifer was leaning forward, emphasizing something with her hand. William was typing rapidly on his tablet. Nicholas' assistant approached Malik. Can I get you some water or coffee? Water's fine. She returned with a bottle and handed it to him. How do you know Mr. Wilson? I met him this morning, and he brought you to an investor meeting, apparently. She studied him with undisguised curiosity. What exactly do you do? I fix things. What kind of things? Things that are broken. She smiled slightly. That's not very specific. Neither is consulting on technical matters. But that's what Mr. Wilson told them I do. The conference room door opened, and Nicholas stepped out. Malik, come with me. They walked past the assistant, past several office doors, and into Nicholas' private office at the end of the hall. It was exactly what Malik expected: floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a desk that probably cost more than a used car. Nicholas closed the door behind them. Sit, Nicholas said. Malik sat in one of the chairs facing the desk. Nicholas remained standing, looking out the window at the city below. That was either the smartest thing you've ever done, or the dumbest thing I've ever done, Nicholas said. I'm not sure which yet. Did they believe me? Malik asked. They believe the analysis. What they don't believe is the story about you being a consultant I hired this morning. He turned to face Malik. Jennifer Thompson is not stupid. She knows exactly what happened in that room. She knows I walked in with a homeless kid I found in my parking garage, and that homeless kid just solved a multi-million-dollar problem that my entire engineering team missed. So what happens now? Nicholas sat down behind his desk. Now we find out if you can actually do what you said you can do. I'm going to have my lead engineer, a man named Daniel Anderson, who has 2 degrees from MIT and 15 years of experience, sit down with you and review the entire system. If he confirms your diagnosis, we move forward. If he doesn't, we have a problem. And if I'm right, then you have a job. A real one. With a salary and benefits and an office and everything that comes with being an actual employee of Wilson Tech Solutions. Malik felt something shift in his chest. He kept his expression neutral, but his hands were gripping the armrests of the chair. What's the catch? Malik asked. The catch is that this only works if you're legitimate. I need to know where you really learned this. I need to know your background, your education, everything. Because if Jennifer or William or any of the other investors dig into who you are and find out you've been lying about your credentials, this entire thing collapses. And when it collapses, it takes my company and their investment with it. I told you the truth, Malik said. My dad worked at a dealership. I learned from watching technicians. After he died, I couldn't afford college, so I taught myself. I read manuals, watched videos, took apart anything I could get my hands on. I'm good at understanding how systems work because I've spent the last 3 years doing nothing but studying systems. Can you prove any of that? How do you prove you taught yourself something? Nicholas leaned back in his chair. That's going to be a problem. Why? Because businesses don't run on trust. They run on verification. I can't put you on payroll as a consultant without some kind of documentation, education, previous employment, certifications, something that proves you are who you say you are and that you know what you're talking about. I just proved I know what I'm talking about. You proved it to me. You proved it to the investors in that room. But the moment this becomes official, HR is going to require a background check, reference checks, verification of employment history. What am I going to tell them? That I found you sleeping in my parking garage and you fixed my car? Malik didn't have an answer for that. Nicholas' phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then set it down. Daniel is on his way up. He's going to review everything with you. Be honest with him. Don't try to oversell what you know. If there are gaps in your knowledge, admit them. He'll respect that more than someone who pretends to know everything. And then what? Then I make a decision about how to move forward. Daniel Anderson arrived 10 minutes later. He was in his 40s, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and he looked like he'd been awake for about 36 hours straight. He shook Malik's hand with a grip that was firm but exhausted. So, you're the one who diagnosed our timing issue, Daniel said. I offered a possibility, Malik said. I could be wrong. Walk me through your reasoning. They spent the next 2 hours in a conference room with a whiteboard and Daniel's laptop. Malik explained his analysis of the sensor sampling rates, the integration timing conflicts, and the buffer solution he'd proposed. Daniel listened carefully, asked pointed questions, and occasionally pulled up technical specifications to verify details. At one point, Daniel stopped him. How do you know the buffer architecture I'm picturing when you describe this? I don't, Malik said. I'm describing the logic of what needs to happen. How you implement it is up to you. But you understand the principles. I understand that you need something that can receive data from 3 different sources at 3 different rates and output a synchronized stream. The specific code or hardware design isn't something I can dictate. Daniel nodded slowly. Most people who understand this kind of problem come from an engineering background. Where did you study? I didn't. You're self-taught. Yes. How? Malik told him the same thing he'd told Nicholas. His father's dealership, the technicians he'd learned from, the years of teaching himself after his father died. Daniel listened, without interrupting. His expression neutral. That's unusual, Daniel said when Malik finished. I know. It's also impressive. The analysis you gave in that investor meeting was better than anything my team has come up with, and we've been working on this for months. He paused. Why didn't we see it? Because you were looking at the sensors individually, Malik said. When something doesn't work, the instinct is to check each component separately to find the broken part. But this isn't a broken component. It's a broken relationship between components. You don't see that unless you're looking at the system as a whole. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he closed his laptop. I'm going to recommend to Nicholas that we implement your solution, he said. I'm also going to recommend that he find a way to bring you onto the team, because if you can see problems like this, we need that perspective. He stood up and extended his hand again. But I'm also going to tell him that this is complicated. HR is going to have questions. Investors are going to have questions. And you're going to need answers that are better than I taught myself. They shook hands, and Daniel left. Malik sat alone in the conference room, looking at the whiteboard filled with diagrams and equations in his own handwriting. It felt surreal. 6 hours ago, he'd been sleeping on the floor of a parking garage. Now he was sitting in a conference room at a tech company, having just explained a multi-million-dollar solution to an MIT-educated engineer. Nicholas appeared in the doorway. Daniel says, you're legitimate. So what happens now? Now, we have a problem to solve. And I don't mean the technical one. They went back to Nicholas' office. He sat behind his desk and pulled up something on his computer, typing quickly. I can't hire you as a consultant without documentation, Nicholas said, but I can hire you as a contractor through a third-party services company. It's not ideal, but it bypasses some of the verification requirements. You'll need to set up an LLC, get an EIN from the IRS, and invoice us for your work. I'll pay you $20,000 for the first month, and if the solution works, we'll renegotiate. Malik stared at him. $20,000. That's below market rate for this kind of work. But given the circumstances, it's what I can justify. Is that acceptable? I don't know how to set up an LLC. My assistant will help you. She's done it before. It'll take a few days, but she can walk you through it. Nicholas leaned back in his chair. Here's what I need from you. I need you to work with Daniel and the engineering team to implement this buffer solution. I need you to be professional, reliable, and competent. I need you to not mention to anyone that I found you living in my parking garage, and I need you to understand that if this doesn't work, if the solution fails, or if you can't deliver what you've promised, this all goes away. Understood. One more thing. Where are you staying tonight? Malik hesitated. I'll figure something out. Nicholas pulled out his phone and made a call. Amanda, I need you to book a room at the Hampton Inn on 3rd Street. Corporate rate, 1 week, charge it to the company. Guest name is Malik Davis. He paused. Yes, that's the one from the meeting. Just book it, please. He hung up and looked at Malik. You can't work effectively if you're sleeping in a parking garage. 1 week, paid by the company. After that, you'll have your first contractor payment and you can figure out your own accommodations. Malik didn't know what to say. The words felt stuck somewhere in his throat. Don't thank me, Nicholas said. This is a business decision. You're more valuable to me if you're rested and focused. That's all this is. But it wasn't all it was. And both of them knew it. Over the next 3 weeks, Malik worked with Daniel and the engineering team to implement the buffer solution. It was harder than he'd anticipated. The theory was sound, but translating theory into functioning hardware required a level of precision and detail that tested the limits of his knowledge. There were moments when he was certain he was about to be exposed as a fraud, moments when the engineers asked questions he couldn't answer, moments when he had to admit he didn't know something and needed to research it. But Daniel was patient. He treated Malik like a colleague rather than an outsider, and when Malik hit gaps in his knowledge, Daniel filled them in without condescension. The rest of the team was more skeptical. They were professionals with degrees and experience, and Malik was a 19-year-old contractor who'd appeared out of nowhere. He heard the whispered conversations when he left rooms, saw the looks they exchanged when he proposed something unconventional. He ignored it and focused on the work. The buffer system they built was elegant. It sat between the sensors and the main processing unit, receiving data streams at their native sampling rates and intelligently reconciling the timestamps before passing integrated data forward. They tested it in simulation first, then on prototype hardware, then on full production units. It worked. The interference disappeared. The readings were clean and synchronized. Daniel ran it through every stress test he could design, and the system held stable. This is going to work, Daniel said one evening as they reviewed the final test results. It was past 9, and they were alone in the lab. I wasn't sure it would. I thought there was a chance we'd hit some edge case that broke the whole thing. But you were right. The sampling rate synchronization was the problem, and this solution fixes it. Malik nodded but didn't say anything. He was too tired to process the relief he should be feeling. Nicholas wants to meet with you tomorrow, Daniel said. Something about formalizing your role. The meeting was in Nicholas' office at 10 in the morning. Malik showed up in clothes he'd bought with part of his first contractor payment jeans that actually fit, a clean shirt, shoes that didn't have holes in the soles. Nicholas gestured for him to sit. Daniel tells me the solution is working, Nicholas said. It is. Investors are happy. Production timeline is back on track. We're looking at a Q4 launch now, which is still delayed but recoverable. He paused. You did good work. Thank you. I want to offer you a full-time position. Junior Systems Engineer, $55,000 a year. Full benefits. You'd report to Daniel. Work with the engineering team on future products. Standard employment contract. Nothing complicated. Malik felt his chest tighten. That's more than I expected. It's what you've earned. But there's a condition. What condition? You need to enroll in college. I don't care where. I don't care what program. But you need to be working toward a degree. The company will reimburse tuition up to $10,000 a year. You can take classes part-time, online, whatever works with the job. But I need you building toward legitimate credentials, not just operating on raw knowledge. Why? Because raw knowledge isn't enough in this industry. You're good, Malik. You're very good. But you're also young, and you don't have the foundation that a formal education provides. There are going to be concepts you don't understand, gaps you don't even know exist. College will fill those gaps. It'll also give you credentials that open doors. Malik looked down at his hands. What if I don't want to go to college? Then I can't offer you the full-time position. I can keep you on as a contractor, but there's no growth path there. Eventually, you'll hit a ceiling where your lack of formal education becomes a liability. That seems like manipulation. It's not manipulation. It's reality. I'm offering you an opportunity to build something real. But opportunities come with requirements, and this one requires that you invest in your own future. Nicholas leaned forward. You're smart enough to understand that what you've done here is exceptional. You're also smart enough to understand that exceptions don't last. If you want a career, you need more than just being good at fixing things. You need legitimacy. Malik thought about the past 3 weeks. The way some of the engineers had looked at him, the whispered doubts, the constant feeling that he was one mistake away from being dismissed as a fluke. Nicholas was right. Being good wasn't enough. People needed reasons to believe you belonged, and a degree was a reason people understood. Okay, Malik said. I'll enroll. Good. Amanda will help you with the paperwork. Start date is next month. Assuming you're fine with the salary and benefits package. I'm fine with it. Nicholas extended his hand across the desk. Welcome to Wilson Tech. They shook hands. And Malik left the office feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not quite hope it was too early for that, but maybe possibility. He called his mother that night from his hotel room. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice tired but alert. Malik? Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. I'm good, actually. I got a job. A job? What kind of job? Engineering work. Technical stuff. It's with a tech company downtown. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Malik, are you being serious right now? I'm being serious. They're paying me $55,000 a year. They want me to start next month. He heard her breath catch. How did this happen? Long story. But I'm okay. I'm staying in a hotel right now, and I'll have my first paycheck in a few weeks. I can help you with rent. Baby, I don't need you to help with rent. I need you to be safe and fed and okay. I'm all of those things. I promise. She was crying now. He could hear it in her breathing. I'm so sorry, Malik. I'm so sorry I couldn't. Mom, stop. You don't have to apologize for anything. I'm okay. We're going to be okay. They talked for another 20 minutes. He told her about the company, about Robert, about the work he'd be doing. He didn't tell her about living in the parking garage or about being homeless for the past 2 weeks. That would only hurt her, and there was no point in that now. When they hung up, Malik sat on the edge of the hotel bed and looked around the room. It was basic, a bed, a desk, a TV bolted to the wall, but it was clean and warm and his for another 4 days before he'd need to find his own place. He thought about Nicholas standing next to his broken Koenigsegg that morning, frustrated and helpless. He thought about how close he'd come to just walking away, to not saying anything, to staying invisible the way he'd stayed invisible for weeks. The difference between those two possibilities felt enormous now. The following weeks moved quickly. Malik enrolled in community college, taking evening classes in computer science and electrical engineering. The work was easier than he'd expected. Most of the foundational concepts were things he'd already taught himself, but the structure was valuable. He learned proper terminology, formal methodologies, the academic frameworks that turned intuitive understanding into communicable knowledge. At Wilson Tech, he settled into the rhythm of the engineering team. Daniel gave him projects that were challenging but achievable, gradually increasing in complexity as Malik proved himself. Some of the other engineers warmed to him. Others remained distant, skeptical of someone who'd appeared from nowhere and skipped the traditional path. Malik didn't let it bother him. He focused on the work. 3 months after he started, Nicholas called him into his office. Malik assumed it was a routine check-in, but Robert's expression was more serious than usual. "Close the door," Nicholas said. Malik closed it and sat down. "I need to tell you something," Nicholas said. "Something I should have told you earlier, but I didn't because I wasn't sure how you'd react." "Okay." Nicholas hesitated, which was unusual for him. "The morning I found you in the parking garage, I wasn't having car trouble." Malik frowned. "What do you mean?" "The Koenigsegg was fine. The key fob was fine. Everything was working perfectly. I don't understand. I fixed the sensor array." "No, you didn't. You thought you did, but there was nothing wrong with it. I disconnected it myself the night before." Malik felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'd been watching you," Nicholas said. "You'd been sleeping in that garage for 2 weeks, and I'd noticed you. The security team wanted to remove you, but I told them to leave you alone. I wanted to see what you'd do, how you'd handle being there, whether you'd cause problems or steal or draw attention to yourself. You didn't do any of those things. You just stayed quiet and tried to stay out of the way. So you staged a breakdown to test me. I staged a situation to see how you'd respond. I wanted to know if you actually knew anything about cars, or if you were just someone who'd memorized some technical terms to sound credible. When you diagnosed a non-existent problem and fixed it with complete confidence, I knew you were legitimate." Malik stood up. "You manipulated me. I gave you an opportunity. You lied to me. You made me think I'd solve something real when it was all fake." "The diagnosis was real," Nicholas said. "Your understanding of automotive security systems was real. Your ability to think through a technical problem and propose a solution was real. The only thing that was staged was the initial scenario. Everything after that, the investor meeting, the engineering work, the job offer, all of that was genuine." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want there to be lies between us. You've proven yourself a dozen times over in the past 3 months. You've earned the right to know the truth about how this started." Malik turned toward the door. "Malik, wait. I need to think." "I understand. But before you go, I want you to ask yourself something. If I hadn't staged that scenario, would any of this have happened? Would you have ever spoken to me? Would I have ever known what you were capable of?" Malik stopped with his hand on the doorknob. "That doesn't make it right." "No, it doesn't. But it made it possible." Malik left without responding. He walked through the office, past the cubicles and conference rooms, and took the elevator down to the parking garage. His car, a used Honda he'd bought with his first paycheck, was parked in the spot where he used to sleep. He sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel. Nicholas had manipulated him. The entire foundation of everything that had happened, the job, the opportunity, the change in his life, was built on a manufactured scenario designed to test him like some kind of experiment. But Nicholas was also right. If that morning had played out differently, if the Koenigsegg had started normally and Nicholas had driven away, none of this would have happened. Malik would still be sleeping in parking garages, still be invisible, still be waiting for a chance that might never come. The manipulation had created the opportunity. That didn't make the manipulation ethical, but it made the opportunity real. Malik started his car and drove home to the small apartment he'd rented. It wasn't much a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom that barely fit a shower, but it was his. He'd signed the lease himself. paid the deposit with money he'd earned, and every morning when he woke up there, he felt the solid reality of it. That night, he didn't sleep well. He kept replaying the conversation with Robert, testing different emotional responses against what he actually felt. Anger seemed appropriate, but he couldn't sustain it. Betrayal felt too strong for what had actually happened. What he settled on, eventually, was something closer to resignation. Nicholas had done what Nicholas did. He'd seen a situation, assessed the variables, and engineered an outcome. The fact that Malik had been one of those variables didn't change the result. The next morning, he went to work. Nicholas was in his office, on a call. He saw Malik through the glass and held up one finger. Wait a minute. Malik waited. When Nicholas finished the call, he opened his door. Come in. Malik entered and closed the door behind him. I'm still angry, Malik said. I know. But I'm not quitting. Nicholas nodded. I didn't think you would. Not because I've forgiven you, or because I think what you did was okay. I'm staying because I've worked too hard for this to throw it away over something that happened in the past. That's fair? But I need you to promise me something. What? No more tests. No more manipulations. If you have a problem with my work, tell me directly. If you have doubts about my abilities, say so. But don't engineer situations to see how I'll respond. I'm not a variable in your equations. Nicholas met his eyes. I promise. They stood there for a moment, and something shifted between them. Not trust that would take time to rebuild, but an understanding. They were going to work together, and they were going to be honest with each other, and that would have to be enough. There's something else you should know, Nicholas said. The investors want to meet with you again. They've been following the product launch progress, and they want to hear directly from you about the work you did. Why? Because they're impressed. And because Jennifer Thompson thinks you might be worth investing in directly. What does that mean? It means she wants to know if you have any ideas of your own, products you'd want to build, problems you'd want to solve. She's looking for the next opportunity, and she thinks you might be it. Malik hadn't thought beyond the immediate work in front of him. The idea of building something of his own felt impossibly distant. I don't have any ideas, Malik said. Then, start thinking about it, because opportunities like this don't come around often, and when they do, you need to be ready. The meeting with Jennifer Thompson happened 2 weeks later. She took Malik to lunch at a restaurant that was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs and menu items that didn't list prices. They sat at a corner table, and she ordered sparkling water and a salad. Nicholas tells me you're enrolled in community college, Jennifer said. Part-time. Evening classes. What are you studying? Computer science and electrical engineering. How's it going? Fine. Most of it's review, she smiled. That's because you already learned it on your own. The degree is just making it official. That's what Nicholas said. He's not wrong. But here's what I want to know. What happens after the degree? What's the next step? Malik thought about it. I haven't planned that far ahead. Why not? Because 6 months ago, I was sleeping in a parking garage. Planning ahead wasn't really an option. Jennifer set down her fork. Fair point. But you're not in that situation anymore. You've got a job, an income, and a trajectory. So I'm asking again, what happens next? I keep working. I get better at what I do. I build a career. Working for someone else. For now. What if you didn't have to work for someone else? What if you could build something of your own? I don't have the resources for that. But you could. If you had the right idea and the right backing, you could build whatever you wanted. That's what I do. I find people with good ideas and help them turn those ideas into companies. Nicholas was one of those people 20 years ago. Now he's running a multi-million-dollar operation. You could do the same thing. I'm 19. Mark Zuckerberg was 19 when he started Facebook. Age isn't the limiting factor. Vision is. So tell me, if you could build anything, what would it be? Malik looked down at his plate. He'd been so focused on surviving, on getting stable, on proving himself, that he hadn't let himself think beyond the immediate future. But there was something, an idea that had been forming in the back of his mind over the past few weeks, something he hadn't articulated yet because it felt too ambitious. Diagnostic systems, Malik said. Not for cars or industrial equipment, for people. Medical diagnostics that work the way I solve technical problems. You look at symptoms the way I look at sensor data. You identify patterns, find inconsistencies, trace them back to root causes. Most medical diagnostics are expensive and slow because they rely on specialized equipment and expert interpretation. But if you could build a system that integrated data from multiple sources, wearable sensors, medical records, lab results, and analyze them holistically, you could catch problems earlier and cheaper. Jennifer was listening carefully. How would it be different from existing health monitoring systems? Existing systems look at metrics individually. Heart rate, blood pressure, sleep patterns, they're all tracked separately. But health doesn't work that way. Systems interact. A sleep problem might be causing a cardiovascular issue, or a cardiovascular issue might be causing a sleep problem. You need something that can see the relationships, not just the individual data points. And you think you could build that? I think it's possible. It would take time and resources and expertise I don't have yet. But the fundamental principle, looking at systems holistically instead of component by component, that's something I understand. Jennifer picked up her phone and typed a note. I want you to write this up. Not a full business plan, just a concept document. 2 or 3 pages explaining the idea, why it matters, what it would take to build. Send it to me by the end of the month. Why? Because I want to see how you think about building something from scratch. If the idea is solid and you can articulate it clearly, we'll talk about next steps. Malik spent the next 2 weeks writing the document. He worked on it during lunch breaks and late at night after his classes. He researched existing health monitoring systems, medical diagnostic protocols, data integration methodologies. He outlined a system architecture, identified technical challenges, and proposed solutions. When he sent it to Jennifer, he wasn't sure what to expect. The idea felt half-formed, like something that needed years of development before it would be remotely viable. She called him 3 days later. I showed your concept to some people I know in medical technology. They think it's interesting. Interesting meaning what? Interesting meaning potentially fundable. Not immediately, you'd need to develop it further, build a prototype, prove the concept works. But as a long-term project, there's merit. So what happens now? Now you keep working at Wilson Tech and building your skills. You finish your degree, you learn everything you can about systems engineering and data analysis and medical technology. And in a few years, when you're ready, we revisit this conversation. Think of it as a seed I'm planting. It might not grow for a while, but when it does, it could be significant. Malik thanked her and hung up. He sat in his apartment, looking at the document on his laptop screen. 2 months ago, he'd been invisible. A week ago, he'd learned that his entire opportunity had started with a manipulation. Now, he had investors asking him about his long-term vision. The trajectory felt impossible, but it was happening. 6 months after he'd started at Wilson Tech, the company launched their industrial monitoring hardware. The product worked flawlessly. Orders came in from manufacturing plants across the country, and the investors who doubted the project were now discussing expansion strategies. At the launch party, Nicholas pulled Malik aside. They stood on the balcony of the event space, looking out at the city lights. You did this, Nicholas said. None of this happens without you. Daniel and the team did most of the work. Daniel and the team implemented your solution. There's a difference. Nicholas sipped his drink. I wanted to tell you something. That morning in the parking garage, when I staged the car problem, I wasn't lying when I said I'd been watching you. But I didn't tell you why I was watching. Why were you? Because 25 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, but the same situation. I was sleeping in my car, trying to find work, invisible to everyone who mattered. Someone gave me a chance. A man named Thomas White, who owned a software company. He hired me as a junior developer even though I didn't have a degree or formal experience. I learned everything from him: how to code, how to run a business, how to see opportunities others missed. When he retired, he sold me the company for $1 because he said I'd already earned it through the work I'd done. Malik turned to look at him. You never mentioned that, because it's not something I advertise. People respect self-made success more when they don't know about the help you received. But I did receive help. Significant help. And I've always believed that the right way to honor that is to do the same for someone else when the opportunity presents itself. So I was your opportunity to pay it forward. You were. But you were also someone who deserved the chance. I didn't help you because I felt obligated. I helped you because I saw something in you that reminded me of myself. The hunger, the knowledge, the potential. I just had to create a situation where that potential could become visible. They stood in silence for a moment. Thank you, Malik said. Don't thank me. Just do the same thing for someone else when the time comes. Malik nodded. He thought about the months ahead, finishing his degree, continuing his work at Wilson Tech, developing his diagnostic system idea. He thought about the people he might meet who were in the same situation he'd been in, invisible and waiting for a chance. When that time came, he'd remember this conversation. He'd remember what it felt like to be seen after being invisible for so long. And he'd make sure someone else got the same opportunity. The city stretched out below them, full of people moving through their lives, most of them invisible to each other. Malik wondered how many of them had the same potential he'd had, the same knowledge and hunger and capability, just waiting for someone to notice. Probably more than anyone realized.